The air in the conference room was freezing. The central air conditioner hissed above our heads, but a thin layer of sweat still formed on the back of my neck. I sat at the very end of the long table. The seat farthest from the head. A seat usually saved for observers. Or people who did not matter. Felix Yen sat on the right side of the main seat, legs crossed, fingers tapping the table lazily. On the screen, the quarterly report scrolled page by page. The profit curve had started falling sharply in the second quarter. By the end of the third quarter, it had dropped 12%. The CFO, Michael Liu, stood beside the projector and flipped to the next slide with a smile. "Mr. Li, our cash flow is tight right now. I suggest we inject another 20 million yuan in operating funds to ease the pressure." 20 million? I opened the paper report in front of me and turned to page 4. My finger stopped on the line labeled raw material procurement cost. Procurement costs are up 40% year over year. Director Liu, if I remember correctly, around this time last year, the average raw material market price moved less than 5%. Michael's smile froze for a split second. Then it returned to normal. "Mr. Li, market fluctuations are normal. This year, upstream suppliers raised prices. Downstream pressure naturally normal." I closed the report and looked up at him. My gaze was neither angry nor cold. Just steady. "Yesterday, I called old Wang from Jianye. They make similar products. Their procurement cost increased by 15%. Director Liu, where did the difference between 40% and 15% go?" The conference room quieted. Only the faint hum of the air conditioner remained. Michael's throat moved. Before he could speak, Felix Yen cut in lazily from the other end of the table. "Mr. Li, are you questioning the financial data?" I looked at him. Felix wore a dark blue custom suit today. The platinum cufflinks on his sleeves reflected cold light. His face carried that same calm smile he always wore. He was vice president of Dingxing Group, in charge of finance and administration. He held 25% of the company's shares. Inside the company, his words carried weight. I didn't say there was a problem. I stood. The chair legs scraped sharply against the floor. "I only want to see the warehouse with my own eyes. Next week, I'll check the inventory myself." "Mr. Li, you are busy every day." Michael hurried to put on a smile. "These small matters can be handled by the people below. I'll ask Xiao Zhang to organize the inventory sheets and deliver them directly to your office." "No," I pushed the report back onto the table. "I don't trust numbers." The room became so quiet that every breath seemed amplified. Several department heads exchanged glances. No one spoke. Felix's smile faded slightly. He uncrossed his legs and leaned forward. "Mr. Li, what do you mean by that?" "Exactly what it sounds like." I had already reached the door. My hand gripped the handle. I turned back and glanced at every face around the table. "Next week, I will personally go to the warehouse and check every batch of incoming goods." The door closed behind me with a dull thud. Felix stared at that door. The smile on his face disappeared completely. He turned and looked at Michael Liu. Michael's forehead was already covered in fine sweat. I did not return to my office. I turned into the fire escape, climbed 2 floors, and pushed open the rooftop door. The afternoon sun was so sharp it made my eyes ache. The wind was strong. It snapped my shirt against my body. I stood at the edge of the rooftop, gripping the railing, looking down at the cars moving below like ants. I had been in business for more than 10 years. I started with a street stall. Later, I won my first real estate project. I built myself from nothing. I had been cheated. I had been trapped. I had watched business partners run off with money. So I knew better than anyone, the prettier the numbers look, the deeper the knife usually hides. Michael's reaction. The speed at which Felix shielded him. Those mismatched lines on the report. Every detail told me one thing. Someone had poisoned the soup at Dingxing. I took out my phone and found Lawyer Chen's number. But I did not dial. I had no hard evidence yet. Calling now would only alert the snake. I put the phone back in my pocket and stood on the rooftop for 10 minutes. The wind dried my eyes until they hurt. That afternoon, I returned to my office, closed the blinds, and opened the company's internal management system. I was the second largest shareholder of Dingxing Group. 30% equity. I had permission to view all original data. After several keystrokes, I opened the access logs for the finance module over the past 3 months. A system prompt popped up. Operation records for this period have been deleted. Once. I scrolled down. Twice. Again. 3 times. 3 deletions. All concentrated at the end of each month. The user who deleted them was shown as System Administrator. And the only System Administrator account at Dingshan Group belonged to Felix Yen. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The fluorescent light above buzzed faintly. I stared at it for a long time, until my vision blurred. Then I sat up. From the deepest drawer of my desk, I took out a backup phone. I turned it on and dialed a number I had not contacted in 3 years. Old Joe. The call connected. There was noise in the background, like a crowded late-night food stall. "It's Ethan Lee." "Mr. Lee?" Old Joe's voice was warm and surprised. "What rare wind blew you my way? I need you to investigate 2 people. "Who?" "Felix Yen, Vice President of Dingshan Group. And Megan Zhou. My wife." The other end went quiet for 2 seconds. Old Joe was an old fox. The moment he heard those 2 names together, he understood. His voice lowered. "How deep?" "Their movements over the past 3 months. Where they went. Who they met. Especially hotels and private clubs. I want times, locations, and photos." "Fine." Old Joe did not ask more. 1 week. 3 days. I said. "I'll pay extra." "Deal." After hanging up, I shut down the backup phone and locked it back in the drawer. Then I leaned back and picked up the photo frame on my desk. The photo was from last year's annual banquet. Megan stood beside me in a white dress, smiling gently. Everyone said we were a model couple. Talented man, beautiful wife. Perfect match. A model couple. I stared at Megan's eyes in the photo and thought about her overtime over the last 3 months. Every Tuesday and Thursday. Always on schedule. She said the project schedule was tight, and the administration department had to stay late to organize documents. I had even worried about her. I told her not to exhaust herself. I told her to hire an assistant to help. She smiled and said no need. She could handle it. My phone lit up. Old Joe sent a message. "Mr. Lee, I did a quick preliminary check. Take a look." The attachment was a surveillance screenshot. The quality was not clear, but the figures could still be recognized. At the entrance of Wanda Mandarin Hotel, a woman in a black dress was walking in with her arm around a man's. Time stamp, last Thursday, 8:35 p.m. The woman's side profile looked 90% like Megan. The man's figure matched Felix. I stared at the screenshot. My fingers slowly tightened. The glass of the photo frame cracked. The crack slashed from the center of Megan's forehead, splitting her smiling face in 2. I placed the frame face down on the desk. Outside the window, the sky darkened. Dusk seeped into the office inch by inch, swallowing the room in shadow. I did not turn on the light. I only sat there in the dark, staring at the screenshot on my phone. Motionless. There was a knock on the door. 3 soft taps. "Come in." Megan pushed open the door. She held a thermal bag. Today she wore a pale pink knit top, her hair loosely pinned. As she approached, I smelled a faint gardenia fragrance. The body wash she had used for 3 years. "I brought soup for you. Auntie made lotus root pork rib soup today. I saved a bowl. Leave it there." My voice was flat. Megan placed the thermal bag on the coffee table. She turned and noticed that my computer screen was black, only the power light blinking. "Why didn't you turn on the light? It's already dark." I was thinking. Thinking about what? She walked over and tried to massage my shoulders. I shifted away. Megan's hand froze in midair. Her smile faded for half a second. "What's wrong? Did the meeting go badly today?" "Nothing." I stood and walked to the window, my back facing her. "Why did you come back so early today?" "The project wasn't urgent today, so I left first." Her tone was so natural there was not a single flaw. "Oh, by the way, Vice President Yen asked me today whether administration needed to assist you with the warehouse inventory check next week." "No need." I turned and looked into her eyes. Administration should just handle its own work. Megan became slightly uncomfortable under my gaze. She subconsciously tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Nothing." I withdrew my gaze. "Leave the soup there. I'll drink it later. Then remember to drink it while it's hot." She picked up her bag. At the door, she looked back at me again. Ethan, are you under too much pressure lately? Maybe we should go out this weekend. We'll see. The door closed. Her footsteps faded down the corridor. I walked to the coffee table and opened the thermal bag. Inside was a steaming bowl of pork rib soup. I lifted the bowl and brought it near my nose. Then set it down. A thin layer of oil floated on the soup's surface. It reflected half of my expressionless face. I picked up my phone and sent Lawyer Chen a message. What is the procedure for a shareholder to withdraw capital? The reply came quickly. Mr. Li, are you withdrawing from Dingsheng? Isn't the company still growing? Just asking. Lawyer Chen called directly. His voice was cautious. To withdraw capital, you need to submit written notice 30 days in advance and call an extraordinary shareholders meeting. If other shareholders disagree, we may need judicial procedure. Fastest possible is about 20 days. But we need proof that the company has major operational risks or that shareholder interests have been damaged. What counts as major risk? Misappropriation of funds, false financial statements, undisclosed major related party transactions. Mr. Li, do you have evidence of anything like that? I was silent for 3 seconds. Not yet. Then, I will soon. I hung up. Then I picked up the soup and poured it into the potted plant beside my desk. The soup soaked into the soil. Several bubbles rose. Then disappeared. I took out the backup phone and typed a message to old Zhou. Watch them closely. Especially Tuesday and Thursday. Old Zhou replied instantly, understood. I locked the phone and threw it on the desk. Then I picked up the cracked photo frame again, removed the photo, folded it twice, and placed it into the deepest drawer. I turned my chair toward the window. Night had fully covered the city. The lights from distant office buildings formed a golden grid. I stared at those lights for a long time. Suddenly, I remembered 5 years ago, when I first brought Megan to this office. The company had just moved into this building. The smell of renovation had not yet faded. Megan stood by the window, spinning in place. Ethan, the view here is so good. We'll only get better and better from now on. Yeah. I had smiled and answered her. Now, sitting in the same chair and looking through the same window, my throat felt blocked. I could not say a word. The phone lit up again. Old Zhou sent a new photo. A surveillance screenshot from the lobby of Wanda Mandarin Hotel. Time stamp, tonight, 7:40 p.m. Megan was wearing a black trench coat, standing at the front desk to check in. 3 steps behind her, Felix leaned against a pillar and spoke on the phone. A faint smile hung on his mouth. Below the photo, old Zhou added one line, Mr. Li, she went again tonight. I stared at the photo and pressed the screen dark. In the darkness, I heard my own heartbeat. One beat after another. Like a blunt weapon hitting my chest. Megan Zhou. I said her name softly to the empty office. There was no emotion in my voice. You really are something. I stood, took my coat, and left the office. The corridor was quiet. Only the crisp sound of my leather shoes striking the tiles followed me. The elevator descended floor by floor. At the lobby, I crossed the hall and pushed through the revolving door. Night wind hit my face, carrying the exhaust and damp chill of the city. I got into the car and started the engine. But I did not shift gears. I sat in the driver's seat with both hands on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I looked at the glowing red sign on the top of Wanda Mandarin Hotel across the street. I watched it for a full 5 minutes. Then I released the steering wheel and picked up my phone. Old Zhou, I need to get into that room. Which one? 1808, next Tuesday. Old Zhou was silent for several seconds. Mr. Li, this matter, I'll pay extra. It's not about money, then he sighed. Fine. I'll find a way. I hung up and finally put the car in gear. The car slipped out of the parking space and merged into night traffic. I did not go home. I drove to a 24-hour convenience store near the office and bought a pack of cigarettes. I rarely smoked. But tonight, I wanted one. Standing beneath the lightbox outside the store, I lit a cigarette and took a drag. I immediately coughed twice. The smoke was blown apart by the wind. I lifted my head and looked at the few scattered stars in the sky. Suddenly, I felt the city was too big. So big that I had sat in one place for 5 years, thinking I had sat in the right seat. Only now did I realize the chair beneath me had been hollow all along. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out. It was Megan. I have overtime tonight. I may come home late. You sleep first. I stared at that line for 10 seconds. Then typed back, okay. Come home early. Send. I put away my phone, crushed the cigarette after only 2 drags, and returned to the car. The engine started again. Headlights cut through the night. In the rearview mirror, the glowing sign of Wanda Mandarin became smaller and smaller. Eventually it shrank into a red dot and disappeared around the corner. Tuesday morning at 7, I sat behind my desk on time. I wore a dark gray casual suit, less formal than usual. On the desk lay 3 documents. All original procurement records I had exported from the company back-end overnight. I compared them line by line, scrolling rapidly. One supplier named Huarui Materials appeared in the procurement list this March. At first, it supplied only a batch of low-value consumables, worth a little over 200,000. But starting in May, Huarui's purchase orders surged. By July, the amount had quadrupled. Each unit price was 30% higher than the market average. I opened Huarui Materials' business registration page. Registration date, May last year. Registered capital, 5 million yuan. Paid in capital, blank. The legal representative's name was partially hidden. It showed, Feng. I took a screenshot and sent it to old Joe. 1 minute later, he replied, investigating. Results expected this afternoon. I closed the page and opened the administration attendance records. Starting in April, Megan's punch-in times showed a strange pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she checked in at exactly 9 a.m. and checked out at exactly 6:03 p.m. Not 1 second off. But in the attendance remarks, the administration supervisor, Wang Feng, wrote reasons such as, out for business, client visit, and project coordination. Every time, there was an approval signature. Clearly written, approver, Felix Yen. I stared at those 3 words for a long time. Then I minimized the page. My phone vibrated. Old Joe, Mr. Lee, tonight's arrangement is ready. I have someone at Wanda Mandarin's front desk. They made you a temporary room card. Valid tonight from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Room 1810, across from 1808. Thanks. No problem. Also, they reserved a private room in the hotel Chinese restaurant tonight. 7:30 to 8:30. You decide when to enter the room. I replied with 1 word. Okay. I stood and went to the pantry for water. Passing the administration department, I saw Megan through the half-open blinds. She sat at her desk on the phone, smiling. Today, she wore a cream tweed jacket. On her ears were the pearl earrings I had bought her for her birthday last year. She smiled with curved eyes, her finger lazily twirling the phone cord. That relaxed, happy expression was one I had not seen from her in a long time. Holding my water glass, I stood there for 3 seconds. Then I walked away. At 5:40 p.m., I sent Megan a message. I have a dinner engagement tonight. I won't be home for dinner. Megan replied instantly. Okay. I also have overtime. Don't drink too much. I put the phone into the drawer and changed into a thin black jacket. All the blinds in the office were lowered. The lights were off. I sat in the dark until 6:40. Then I stood, took my car keys, and left. Evening traffic was clogged like solid asphalt. I parked in an inconspicuous alley across from Wanda Mandarin and turned off the engine. Leaning back in the seat, I watched people entering and leaving through the revolving door. At 7:20, a white BMW stopped in front of the hotel. Megan got out from the driver's seat. She had changed into a black dress. Her hair had been blown into large waves, falling over her shoulders. She stood at the entrance and tapped her phone twice. Then turned around. Felix's car stopped right behind hers. He got out wearing a light gray shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He took the bag from Megan's hand and naturally placed his arm around her waist. They walked side by side into the revolving door. Felix lowered his head and said something by her ear. Megan lifted her face and laughed. I recognized that smile. It was the smile of a woman in love being coaxed happy. I raised my phone and took 3 photos through the windshield. The night light was not good. The images had some grain. But the outlines were clear. After they disappeared through the revolving door, I waited 5 more minutes before getting out. I took a black backpack from the back seat, slung it over my shoulder, and crossed the road quickly. The hotel lobby was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung low. The marble floor shone like a mirror. I did not go to the front desk. I went straight into the elevator area and pressed the 18th floor. The elevator rose smoothly. The corridor on the 18th floor was covered in dark carpet. Doors lined both sides, quiet and orderly. Room 1810 was near the right end of the corridor. I swiped the card and entered. It was a standard room, not large. The curtains were half drawn. Through the peephole, the number on the door across the corridor, 1808, was directly visible. I closed the door without turning on the lights. Then I walked to the peephole and looked out once. The door to 1808 was shut. A thin line of warm yellow light leaked from beneath it. I leaned against the wall beside the door and took out my phone. I lowered the screen brightness to minimum. And waited. Time passed second by second. At 8:07, footsteps sounded at the far end of the corridor. One light. One heavy. Then came the beep of an electronic lock. The door to 1808 opened and closed. A trace of laughter squeezed through the crack before the heavy soundproof door swallowed it completely. I stood motionless. The time on my phone showed 8:08. The corridor became quiet again. I stood in room 1810 for nearly 2 hours. I did not sit. I did not drink water. I simply leaned against the wall and listened to the occasional footsteps passing outside. At 10:11, the lock across the hall sounded again. Footsteps came from 1808. The lighter steps were in front. The heavier ones behind. They walked toward the elevator. As they passed the door of 1810, I heard Megan's voice. I already sent the framework for next week's proposal to your email. I'll finalize the details by Wednesday. Felix laughed softly. No rush. Take your time. That won't do. You said it has to be done before the end of the month. Their voices faded. The elevator dinged open, then closed. The corridor returned to silence. I waited 10 more minutes before opening the door of 1810 and walking across to 1808. I crouched and took out a spare keycard prepared in advance. Old Joe had obtained it using housekeeping permission. I held my breath and pressed it against the sensor. The light turned green. The lock turned. I pushed the door open. Inside the room was a mixture of alcohol and perfume. The bedside lamp was on. There were indentations in the blanket. On the small table sat an opened bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. I put on gloves and quickly searched the room. The bedside drawer was half open. Inside was a sticky note. Megan's handwriting. Next week's proposal framework sent to email. Details to be checked Wednesday. I photographed it. Beside it was a hotel receipt. Room 1808. Check-in time, 7 tonight. Check-out, tomorrow morning. The name in the registration field was Felix Yen. I took photos of everything. Then I closed the door gently and returned to room 1810. After removing my gloves, I sat in the single sofa in the corner and closed my eyes. Something churned inside my chest. I pressed it down inch by inch. Then I took out my phone and messaged old Joe. Got it. Photos. Congratulations. What about Huawei materials? 3 minutes later, old Joe sent me a PDF. I opened it and turned to the legal representative page. There it was clearly written, Legal Representative, Felix Yen. Establishment date, May last year. Business scope, building material sales. Related enterprise, Dingsheng Group Company, limited long-term cooperative client. I stared at the screen. My thumb pressed against the words, Felix Yen, for a long time. I remembered how, over the past 3 years, I had voted for Felix on the board. Supported his expansion plans. Signed off on his executive compensation. Every one of those actions had been a knife I handed him myself. I turned off the phone, stood, and pulled the curtains closed. Room 1810 faced the city night view. Thousands of lights spread outside the glass. I stood there for a long time. Finally, I said only one sentence. Felix Yen, what a brilliant move. At 11 sharp, I left the hotel. On the drive home, I stopped at a red light. In the taxi beside me, a man was lowering his head and handing water to the woman in the passenger seat. She drank, then casually reached out and rubbed his hair. The light turned green. I stepped on the accelerator and left that scene behind. When I opened the door at home, the living room lights were on. Megan sat on the sofa in a home dress, looking at a tablet. Seeing me return, she lifted her face. Your dinner ended? Did you drink? I made sobering soup for you. I didn't drink. I changed shoes and sat at the other end of the sofa. Why aren't you asleep? I was waiting for you. She put down the tablet and moved closer, the gardenia scent from her body floating over. Tired today? Not bad. Megan reached over and squeezed my shoulder, her thumb pressing twice into the muscle at the back of my neck. You've been tense lately. Relax. I said nothing. Her hand moved from my neck to my arm, then slid down my forearm and finally covered the back of my hand. Her fingers were warm and soft. Just like countless times over the past 5 years. I lowered my head and looked at her hand. Her wedding ring was still on her ring finger. The platinum band reflected tiny broken lights. Then I remembered the sticky note in the hotel room. Megan's handwriting. Her arm around Felix's as they entered the revolving door. And her message tonight, I also have overtime. Megan. I spoke. What did you work overtime on tonight? Her hand paused for less than half a second. Then it returned to normal. The administration department's quarterly evaluation forms. And next month's scheduling plan. A pile of trivial things. Hard work. It's not hard. She leaned on my shoulder and closed her eyes. You've been working hard too. When this period is over, let's travel somewhere. Okay. She leaned there a little longer, then said she was sleepy and went to bed first. The bedroom door remained half open, leaving a narrow strip of light. I sat on the sofa and listened to the rustling sound of her getting under the covers. I waited 1 minute. Then I picked up her bag from the coffee table. It was a classic LV bag I had bought her for her birthday last year. I opened the zipper. Inside were a makeup pouch, keys, 2 bank cards, and a lipstick. I moved them aside. At the very bottom, I found a room card. Wanda Mandarin Hotel. The card sleeve was marked, Room 1808. I took a photo. Then I put the card back exactly where it had been, zipped the bag, and placed it back. The whole process took less than 15 seconds. I sat on the sofa and looked at that photo again and again. Then I stood, entered the study, closed the door, and called Lawyer Chen. Lawyer Chen, I have the evidence. What evidence? Felix Yen set up a shell company and sold overpriced materials to Dingsheng. Related party transaction amount is roughly 37 million. Also, I have photos and hotel records proving his relationship with Megan. The other end was silent for a long time. Then Lawyer Chen exhaled deeply. Mr. Li, this is huge. I know. I stood before the study window, looking out at the dark night. So I need you to do one thing. Tell me. Draft the capital withdrawal notice tomorrow morning. Then notify all shareholders. Extraordinary shareholders meeting in 3 days. 3 days? Is that enough? Enough. I said. I'll give them 3 days to choose. Step down decently, or watch me place everything on the table. After hanging up, I returned to the living room. Megan's bag still sat on the coffee table. I glanced at it, then looked away. When I entered the bedroom, Megan was already asleep on her side. Her breathing was even and long. The bedside lamp cast warm yellow light over half of her peaceful face. I stood beside the bed for a moment. Then I reached out and turned off the light. In the darkness, I heard my own heartbeat. Steady. Controlled. Like a clock already counting down. I went to the living room, took out the backup phone, and sent old Zhou one final message. Organize a complete timeline. Start from the establishment of Huawei Materials last May. Align every transfer, meeting attendance record, and travel record involving Felix. I need it for the shareholders meeting in 3 days. Old Zhou replied with a thumbs up emoji. I put down the phone and sat on the sofa for the rest of the night. I did not sleep. The shareholders meeting was set for Friday at 9 in the morning. I arrived 20 minutes early. I wore a black formal suit. My tie was knotted perfectly. The previous night, I had sorted documents in the study until 3 in the morning. Everything old Zhou sent had been printed, organized by timeline, bound into folders, and marked with fluorescent tabs. 3 thick folders sat in a black briefcase. Heavy. When I entered the conference room, only Secretary Chen was adjusting the projection equipment. Seeing me, he called softly, Mr. Li. His eyes avoided mine. What happened? I placed the briefcase on the table. Vice President Yen came early. He is in finance. Tell him to come. Secretary Chen nodded and hurried away. I pulled out a chair and sat near the center of the table. Before me, I opened the first folder. The first page was Huarui Materials registration record. The legal representative field had been circled 3 times in red. Shareholders arrived one after another. Several minority shareholders sat on both sides of the table, whispering and occasionally glancing at me. Felix entered at 8:57. He wore a deep purple shirt and his signature smile. Behind him came Megan. Today she wore a white suit dress. Her makeup was delicate. In her hands were a notebook and a recording pen. Megan sat at the side of the conference table. Her seat was separated from Felix by one empty chair. That empty chair was where I usually sat. I glanced at it. I said nothing. "Good morning, Mr. Lee." Felix sat down and placed both hands on the table. "I heard you have something important to announce today. I canceled 2 meetings this morning to attend. I'm giving you enough face, right?" "Enough." I opened the folder. "Then let's begin." The room quieted. Felix's smile faded a little as he glanced at the 3 thick folders in front of me. A faint flicker passed through his eyes. "Today's shareholders' meeting has only one topic." I stood and pushed the first folder to the center of the table. "I, Ethan Lee, as a shareholder holding 30% of Dingsheng Group, formally submit my capital withdrawal request. This is the written notice. According to the company charter and legal requirements, notice was submitted 3 days in advance. Today it takes effect." The conference room seemed to be muted. For 3 seconds, no one made a sound. Then a small shareholder blurted, "Withdraw? Mr. Lee, are you crazy?" "I'm not crazy." My voice was flat. But each word struck the table clearly. "I need to convert the shares under my name into cash and exit. Lawyer Chen has prepared the legal documents. They will be sent to all of you for review later." "Mr. Lee." Another shareholder stood and slapped the table. "You know the company's current situation. If you withdraw now, the cash chain will break and none of us will survive. So the question you should ask is not why I'm withdrawing." My gaze swept across Felix's face. "You should ask who made the company like this, who forced me to withdraw." Felix leaned back. His expression remained calm, but beneath the table, his fingers had already twisted together. "Mr. Lee, do you have any basis for saying that? If this is about the inventory issue from the other day, we can arrange people to check. There's no need to threaten everyone with withdrawal." "I do not threaten." I pulled out one sheet from the folder and pushed it to the center. "Felix Yen, tell me, what relationship does this company have with Dingsheng?" The page showed the business registration for Huarui Materials. Felix glanced down. His expression changed instantly. But he forced himself still and pulled the corner of his mouth. "Huarui Materials? A building materials supplier. What does that have to do with me? The legal representative line has your name. Felix Yen, do you want to tell me it's someone else with the same name? Or that you didn't know you registered a company?" Gasps sounded around the table. Several shareholders leaned over to read the page. Then all turned to look at Felix. Felix's throat moved. The smile finally disappeared. He sat upright, voice sinking. "Ethan Lee, you investigated me?" "I investigated the company accounts." I pulled out another sheet. "This is Dingsheng's purchase flow to Huarui Materials over the past year. Total amount, 37.2 million yuan. Huarui's paid in capital is 0. Its business site does not exist. It has no employees. Its tax registration shows 0 filings for 3 years. A shell company with no employees, no location, and no business trace took 37.2 million from Dingsheng. Felix Yen, tell me, where did the money go?" Felix's face turned white. His mouth opened. No sound came out. At the far end of the table, Megan suddenly lifted her head. Her face went pale. Her lips trembled slightly. "And that's not all." I opened the second folder. "These are private account transfers between CFO Michael Liu and Felix Yen over the past 6 months. Michael received 150,000 yuan from Felix every month. The note says, consulting fee. What consulting work costs 150,000 a month? I hired professional financial consultants before. The market price is around 30,000. Bullshit." Felix finally lost control. He stood violently. The chair scraped the floor with a sharp sound. "Ethan Lee, you fabricated evidence. This is defamation. I will call the police." Call them. I looked up at him, my gaze cold as ice. Let economic crime investigators check Huawei's cash flow. Let them check where those so-called consulting fees in Michael's account ended up. Felix Yen, you opened a private account at HSBC Hong Kong. Starting this April, you received funds there. The transfer note always said, investment return. Do you want me to print those records for everyone too? Felix's lips shook. His face went from white to red, then blue. His hands pressed hard against the table until his knuckles whitened. But he could not say a word. The room was terrifyingly quiet. Several minority shareholders were already secretly recording with their phones. Vice President Yen. I closed the folder. I'll give you two choices. First, you resign voluntarily. You leave every position at Dingsheng and return every cent you swallowed. If cash is not enough, sell houses, cars, and all liquid assets to fill the hole. I reserve the right to sue, but I can choose not to pursue criminal responsibility. Second, I pushed the third folder to the middle of the table. It was full of printed photos. I hand all these materials to the police. You, Michael Liu, and the others in finance will be charged with occupational embezzlement. How many years you get is up to the court. I did the math. 37 million. 5 years minimum. Felix collapsed back into his chair. Sweat ran down from his temples. His fingers trembled. His lips moved several times before he finally forced out a laugh uglier than crying. Ethan Lee, you are ruthless. I'm ruthless? I leaned forward, both hands pressed on the table, looking down at him. Felix, I started from zero. I built Dingsheng from a tiny studio into a company with annual revenue over 100 million. I hired you as vice president. I gave you a car, a house, shares, and control over the financial system. What did you do? You opened your company inside mine. You used my money to feed your pocket. Tell me, who is ruthless? Felix lowered his head. He had no answer. I straightened and turned to Megan at the other end of the table. Every gaze followed mine. Megan sat there with her notebook open. Her pen hovered above the paper. A drop of ink had already spread on the page. Megan Zhou. I called her name. My voice was not loud, but it pierced the silence like a needle. As administration director, you approved Huawei Materials as a supplier. Your signature is on the supplier entry approval form. As my wife, you control all household accounts. Did any portion of the money Felix took from the company flow into our family account? Megan's face was white as paper. Her mouth opened. The light in her eyes shattered. I don't know, her voice was tiny, as if crushed in her throat before being pushed out. I just followed procedure. The purchasing department handles supplier qualifications. I only signed. I took out my phone, opened the photo of the room card, and turned the screen toward her. What about this? You told me you worked overtime every Tuesday and Thursday. You worked overtime all the way to room 1808 of Wanda Mandarin Hotel. Megan Zhou, whose shift were you working? Megan froze. She stared at the room card photo. Her pupils contracted violently. Her lips shook. You went through my bag? I went through my own things. I put the phone away. I bought that bag. You put things inside it. Megan, do you think I'm blind? The room exploded. Shareholders gasped. Whispers spread. Felix jerked his head toward Megan, his eyes full of shock and panic. Megan's tears came without warning. She stood. The chair fell behind her with a loud bang. Ethan, listen to me. It's not what you think. Vice President Yen and I were only discussing work. That day was to meet a client. Discussing work in a hotel room? My voice finally turned cold. Every word was dipped in ice. Megan, do you take me for a 3-year-old child? Every Tuesday and Thursday night, you worked overtime. I left dinner for you at home until 11. And now you tell me it was for clients? You and Felix met clients in a hotel room? Fine. Tell everyone. What client? What project needed a 3-hour meeting in a hotel room? Say it clearly in front of everyone. Megan's mouth opened. Tears covered her face. She could not say one word. Can't say it? I looked at her. There was disappointment in my eyes. Disgust too. But more than anything, there was a numb calm. Megan, we were married for 5 years. I ask myself honestly, I never wronged you. I paid for your parents' hospital bills. I arranged your brother's job. The car you drove, the house you lived in, the bags you carried, which one didn't come from me? And this is how you repaid me? Ethan, Megan cried and stepped toward me, trying to grab my arm. I stepped back and avoided her. Looking at the tear-streaked, ruined woman before me, I suddenly felt she was a stranger. This was the person who had shared my bed for 5 years. Now she stood before me, crying as if her heart had been torn apart. But inside me, there was only empty cold. Megan Zhou, I already asked Lawyer Chen to draft the divorce agreement. Pack your things before tomorrow. I'll have someone send them to your mother's house. You explain it to your mother yourself. I won't go. No. Megan screamed. Her tears ruined her makeup. Mascara spread across her cheeks. You can't do this to me. Ethan Lee, you can't. You withdraw your capital, you divorce me, then what am I supposed to do? What about my parents? They'll be furious. That is your problem. I turned away and stopped looking at her. Secretary Chen, call security. Director Zhou is emotionally unstable. Escort her out. Secretary Chen answered and hurried to open the door. 2 guards entered and stood on either side of Megan. Megan was dragged out of the conference room while crying and screaming. Her voice traveled far down the corridor. Then the elevator doors cut it off. The conference room returned to silence. Felix sat in his chair, as if his bones had been removed. His head was buried in his hands. His shoulders trembled faintly. Several shareholders exchanged looks. No one dared speak first. I stood at the center of the table and placed the 3 folders back into my briefcase. Then I looked at Felix. My voice was indifferent. Vice President Yen, your resignation letter must be on my desk before 3 this afternoon. If it is late, I call the police. Felix did not lift his head. His shoulder twitched once. From his throat came a broken sound. I understand. I picked up the briefcase and turned out of the conference room. Sunlight poured in through the floor-to-ceiling windows in the corridor, brightening the ground. I walked toward the elevator. Then stopped. At the far end of the corridor, Megan was crouched against the wall, hugging her knees and crying. 2 guards stood beside her, helpless. When she looked up and saw me, she suddenly rushed over. The guards blocked her. Ethan Lee. Listen to me. Just 1 sentence. I stopped and turned. 2 steps away, I looked at her. Her face was a disaster. Her hair had fallen loose. Her white suit dress was wrinkled. She looked like a passerby caught in a rainstorm. Speak. Felix and I, it's not what you think. Really, we were only what? Megan's mouth opened. Tears ran into her mouth. She shook her head. No words came out. I looked at her for 3 seconds. Then I turned, entered the elevator, and pressed the 1st floor. Before the doors closed, I heard her let out a heart-rending sob behind me. Like a small animal with its tail stepped on. The stainless steel doors cut it off. The elevator descended. Floor numbers changed one by one. My face reflected on the polished metal door. Expressionless. I lowered my head and looked at my right hand. The wedding ring was still on my ring finger. I removed it and clenched it in my palm. The metal pressed into my skin. It felt faintly hot. The elevator reached the 1st floor. The doors opened. I walked through the lobby and pushed out through the revolving door. Sunlight hit my face so hard I narrowed my eyes. At the bottom of the steps, Lawyer Chen stood beside the car, holding a file. He nodded at me. Mr. Lee, the first batch of withdrawal documents is ready. We can submit them this afternoon. I walked down the steps and casually tossed the wedding ring into the trash can beside the road. The metal hit the bottom with a crisp sound. Let's go. I opened the car door and sat in. To the law firm. The engine started. The car entered traffic. In the rearview mirror, the glass curtain wall of Dingxing Tower reflected painfully bright light. I withdrew my gaze and looked forward. My hands were steady. My phone vibrated. Old Zhou had sent a message. Felix is moving. He's making an urgent call to someone named Mark Ma. Mark Ma is the owner of Huaxin Real Estate. An old friend of Felix. I read it and pressed the screen dark. Lawyer Chen. Yes? Investigate a man named Mark Ma. Owner of Huaxin Real Estate. Check financial connections between him and Felix Yen. Understood. The car drove onto the elevated road. The city flew backward on both sides. I leaned back and closed my eyes. Sunlight came through the window and dyed the inside of my eyelids warm red. I heard my heartbeat. Steady. Deep. Like a ship that had finally turned away from the reef. The ship had not sunk. The captain was still there. And the course was set. At 10 in the morning, the conference room door opened again. This time, I sat in the main seat. In front of me lay a list. 7 copies, one for each person, face down on the table. Inside the room sat 7 people: CFO Michael Liu, Purchasing Supervisor Zhang Wei, Administration Supervisor Wang Fang, and 4 other department heads. Everyone is here. I opened the first page of the folder. Michael Liu. Michael's face was already green. From the moment he entered, he had been wiping sweat. His handkerchief looked soaked enough to wring water from. Mr. Li, CFO Michael Liu. You have worked at Dingsheng for 4 years. My voice was flat, like reading a product manual. After Felix Yen entered the company, you began helping him falsify accounts. On the procurement side, you inflated prices. On the sales side, you concealed revenue. The difference was transferred in batches through Huarui materials. Every month, you received 150,000 yuan from Felix as a so-called consulting fee. 11 months total. 1.65 million. Did this happen? Michael's lips trembled. Then his body slid from the chair. With a thud, he knelt on the floor. Mr. Li. Mr. Li, I was wrong. Felix forced me. He had something on me. I had no choice. What did he have on you? I embezzled 200,000 in reimbursements the year before last. He found out and used it to threaten me. I didn't dare refuse him. I looked at him kneeling on the ground, crying with snot and tears. My expression did not change. Michael Liu, since you admitted voluntarily, the company can suggest leniency to the police. But the fact of occupational embezzlement is established. You must bear legal responsibility. Security. 2 guards entered. They lifted Michael from the floor. As he was dragged out, he turned back and cried, Mr. Li. I truly know I was wrong. Please spare me this once. The sound was cut off by the door at the end of the corridor. Second. I opened the next page. Purchasing Supervisor, Zhang Wei. Zhang Wei sat in his chair. His hands gripped his knees, knuckles white. He did not beg like Michael. He lowered his head, lips pressed into a line. You were responsible for reviewing supplier qualifications. You signed the supplier entry approval for Huarui materials. What price did Felix give you? Zhang Wei was silent for several seconds. His voice was hoarse. He transferred me 300,000. He said it was project bonus. 300,000. I closed the list. Enough for 2 years in prison. Zhang Wei, return the money and I will ask the court for leniency. Can you pay it back? Yes, I'll return it. I'll return it now. Good. Secretary Chen, take him to finance. From today onward, Zhang Wei is dismissed and will never be rehired. But since he volunteered to return the money, the company reserves the right not to sue. Zhang Wei stood, bowed to me, and followed Secretary Chen out. At the door, he stumbled and had to hold the frame. Third. Administration Supervisor, Wang Fang. Wang Fang was in her 40s. She had joined Dingsheng in its 3rd year. An old employee. She sat with her head lowered and her shoulders tucked in, like a gray sparrow dragged into the light. Megan Zhou left after clocking in every Tuesday and Thursday. On the attendance sheet, it says out for business and client visit. You approved and signed those entries. Wang, you have worked here for 7 years. I don't believe you couldn't tell what she was doing. Wang Fang's tears fell onto the table with a soft tap. Mr. Li, I knew. But I didn't dare say anything. Megan was your wife. Felix was vice president. I'm only a small supervisor. How could I dare? So you chose silence. I looked at her. Wang, 2 months of salary deducted. Company-wide criticism notice. You keep your position, but your performance rating drops to the lowest level. If you disagree, you may resign. I accept. She wiped her tears. I accept. Thank you, Mr. Li. I nodded and signaled for her to leave. At the door, Wang Fang suddenly turned back. Mr. Li, Megan, she truly isn't a bad person. She was just confused. Wang, enough. I raised my hand to stop her. Go out. The door closed. 4 department heads remained. I glanced at them and pushed the remaining pages to the center of the table. The 4 of you, I won't name names. Tell me yourselves. Did you have benefit exchanges with Felix? Did you take his money? They looked at one another. Silence lasted more than 10 seconds. Then the marketing manager at the far end raised his hand. Mr. Lee, Felix gave me a card last year. He said it was a project reward. There's 100,000 in it. I didn't spend it. It's still in my drawer. Hand it to finance. Write a self-criticism. Half your bonus deducted. The second person to raise his hand was HR. He asked me to put his niece on the payroll. She received 8,000 yuan a month but never came to work. Remove her name. Recover the salary. You are demoted one level. The third and fourth also confessed. Amounts ranged from 50,000 to 200,000. I did not lose my temper. I handled each one and dismissed them all. The room emptied. I sat in the main seat. Before me remained only a stack of signed repayment confirmations and self-criticisms. I flipped through them once and placed them into a folder. Sunlight leaked through the blinds, cutting the tabletop into parallel bands of light. My phone rang. Lawyer Chen. Mr. Lee, Michael Liu's occupational embezzlement evidence has been submitted to economic crime investigators. Felix's 3 properties and 2 cars have been officially frozen by court this morning. What about Huarui Materials? The company account has been frozen by the bank. Balance is only 430,000. Felix transferred most funds to his overseas personal account. We have applied to the Foreign Exchange Authority for assistance. Good. One more thing. I stood and walked to the window. Draft a divorce agreement for me. Property division according to legal standards. As for the house and car, I won't take her half. The rest of the cash assets must be fully cleared. Lawyer Chen paused. Mr. Lee, the house is your premarital property. Give it to her. I said. Consider it the price of a 5-year lesson. After hanging up, I stood by the window and watched the cars below for a while. Then my phone vibrated again. Old Zhou. Mr. Lee, the Mark Ma investigation has progress. Huaxin Real Estate made a 10 million yuan consulting service payment at the end of last year. The receiving party was an offshore company. I penetrated several layers of ownership. The final controller points back to Felix Yen. I narrowed my eyes. Was money going from Mark Ma to Felix, or Felix to Mark Ma? Mark Ma paid Felix. The timing is interesting too. Last November. That was the month Dingsheng made its first major payment to Huarui Materials. I suspect Felix used part of the money he siphoned from Dingsheng to help Mark Ma's real estate project. Borrowed? Or invested? More likely invested. Mark Ma had a huge funding gap when he acquired the land in the East District. Felix suddenly had money. I thought for a moment. What has Mark Ma been doing recently? He's fighting for land in the West District. The land is right beside your Xi'an project. He wants to build a shopping center and compete with you directly. Is he targeting me? Hard to say. But even after Felix fell, Mark Ma hasn't stopped. I think he may be acting for Felix. I hung up and returned to the desk. On a sticky note, I wrote, Mark Ma. Then added a question mark beside it. I picked up my phone and called old Wang from Jianya Real Estate, a longtime partner. Brother Wang, I need a favor. Mark Ma from Huaxin Real Estate is pursuing that West District land. Help me ask around about his funding source. Fine. Wait for my call. I put down the phone and leaned back. The curtain moved in the wind. Sunlight shifted across the desk. I rubbed my temples and closed my eyes. At 2 in the afternoon, Megan's mother called. I looked at the name on the screen. After 2 seconds of hesitation, I answered. Ethan, her voice was old and tired. Megan told me. You two are really divorcing? Auntie, I've decided. I know what she did. I am not calling to persuade you. Her voice trembled, but she held it steady. When Megan's father was ill, you gave us 300,000 for treatment. We have always remembered that money. Now do you want it back? No need, Auntie. That money was my filial respect to you. No, her tone suddenly became firm. It must be returned. Megan wronged you. We cannot continue owing you. Are you free this weekend? Come over. I'll give you the money. Auntie, come. Even if it is only to let us old couple feel at peace. I was silent for a long time. Finally, I said, okay. After hanging up, I placed the phone on the desk and walked to the window. The sycamore trees below had begun shedding leaves. Yellow-brown leaves spun in the wind as they fell. I remembered the autumn 5 years ago, right after Megan and I got married. We had taken a photo beneath that tree. Megan jumped into a pile of leaves, and I caught the moment with my phone. She smiled until her eyes curved like crescent moons. Back then, it was truly good. So good that remembering it now made a sour ache spread through my chest. I inhaled deeply and cleared those images from my mind. In the drawer was another folder. The project proposal I needed to submit to new investors tomorrow. I took it out, opened it, and reviewed it page by page. The pen scratched softly across the paper. At 7 that evening, I left the office. Downstairs, beside the flower bed, I saw a person crouching. Megan had changed clothes. Jeans and a hoodie. No makeup. Hair tied into a ponytail. She looked almost like a college girl. When she saw me come out, she slowly stood. "Ethan." Her voice was hoarse. Her eyes were swollen red. Clearly, she had cried all day. I stopped 3 meters away and looked at her. "I'm not here to beg." Megan sniffed. "I know I was wrong. I'm not worthy of asking for your forgiveness. I want to return something to you." She took a bunch of keys from her pocket and stepped forward. Hanging from the keyring was a faded little leather horse charm. I had bought it from a street stall for 10 yuan when we first met. She had kept it on her keys for 5 years. "The house keys, I've already moved out. My things are packed. Only a few boxes, in the living room. When you're free, have someone send them to my mother's place." I looked at the keys. "I did not take them. You can keep the house." "No." Megan pushed the keys into my hand. When her fingers touched my palm, she drew back as if burned. "I'll stay in the company dormitory. The house is yours." "I don't want it." She stepped back. Her hand slipped into the pocket of her hoodie. Her toe pressed against a fallen leaf on the ground. "Ethan, I'm sorry. When Felix started doing those things, I didn't know at first. By the time I realized, it was already too late. He told me if I cooperated, once he moved the money out, he would take me with him. I lost my mind. I was stupid. You don't need to explain." My voice was light. "At this point, none of it matters." "I know." Megan lifted her head. Her eyes were red like blood. "I just want you to know, it's not that I didn't love you. I was confused. You were good to me. I knew. I was the one who didn't cherish it." I clenched the keys. The metal felt cold. "Megan, Lawyer Chen will send you the divorce agreement. Just sign it. You don't need to worry about anything else." She nodded. Tears fell again. She wiped them messily. "Then I'll go." She turned toward the bus stop, walking fast, as if afraid she would regret it. After more than 10 steps, she stopped. She did not turn back. She only stood there, shoulders shaking faintly. I watched her thin back. The streetlight stretched her shadow long and narrow. I did not speak. 5 seconds later, Megan continued walking. She joined the people waiting at the bus stop. She got on a bus. The doors closed. The bus carried her into the night. I lowered my head and looked at the keys in my palm. The faded little horse charm was damp with sweat from my hand. I removed it. I did not throw it away. I held it for a moment, then placed it into my pocket. I got into the car, started the engine, and left the parking lot. When I passed the Wanda Mandarin intersection, I did not slow down. The red hotel sign shrank quickly in the rearview mirror, then disappeared. On Saturday afternoon, I parked outside Megan's parents' apartment building. It was an old residential compound in the east of the city. 6 floors. No elevator. The white tiles on the exterior had peeled in many places, exposing gray concrete beneath. I used to come often. Each time, I brought fruit and health supplements. Megan's mother always cooked a full table of dishes. Her father sat on the sofa making tea for me. We would talk until late. Today, I brought nothing. I went upstairs and knocked. Megan's mother opened the door. She wore a washed-out blue knit sweater. Her hair was much whiter than before. The wrinkles on her face were deep, as if carved into her skin. Seeing me, her lips moved. She tried to smile but failed. She stepped aside. "Come in." She pointed to the sofa in the living room. "Sit." Tea and a plate of fruit had already been placed on the coffee table. Just like before. But Megan's father was not on the sofa. I asked, "Where is Uncle?" "Lying down inside." Her mother lowered her eyes. After hearing about you two, his blood pressure rose again. He hasn't gotten out of bed for 2 days. The living room went quiet. I sat and accepted the cup she handed me. I held it but did not drink. Megan's mother took a craft paper envelope from the drawer beneath the TV cabinet and placed it on the coffee table. Then she pushed it toward me. There is $350,000 inside. $300,000 is what you gave us for treatment back then. The extra $50,000 is interest. Her voice was hoarse. We should have returned it earlier. We dragged it until now. We are sorry. I looked at the envelope. I did not reach for it. Auntie, I said the money doesn't need to be returned. It must be. Her voice was not loud, but firm. If you don't take it, I won't feel at peace for the rest of my life. Megan did such a thing. Our family has no face to owe you anymore. She pushed the envelope farther forward. Her fingers pressed on the paper, as if trying to press something down. After several seconds, I accepted it. The paper envelope felt heavy in my hand. I placed it on my knees without opening it. Auntie, Megan, she moved out. Her mother cut me off. She came back yesterday, took a few clothes, and left. She said the company arranged dormitory housing. I asked her what happened, but she wouldn't speak. She only cried. Her mother's eyes reddened. She turned away and wiped them with the back of her hand. Ethan, our family wronged you. Her father scolded her yesterday. He called her foolish. He said she was blind. She knelt on the floor and kowtowed to him until her forehead was bruised. I clenched the envelope on my knees. My knuckles whitened. I'm not here to plead for her. Her mother turned back. Her old eyes were honest and tired. I only wanted to tell you in person. Our Zhou family owes you. In the future, if you need anything, just say it. Even if we have to sell everything, we will help you. Auntie, please don't say that. My voice became a little rough. What happened between Megan and me is between us. You and Uncle were always good to me. I remember that. I took the little leather horse charm from my pocket and placed it on the coffee table. It belongs to Megan. Please give it back to her. Her mother looked at that faded leather horse. Tears finally fell. She picked it up and held it in her palm. She nodded, but said nothing. I stood, holding the envelope under my arm. Auntie, I'm leaving. Please take care of yourselves. Ethan. She called me. From her pocket, she took out a photo. This was taken on your wedding day. I kept it on the TV cabinet all these years. Today, I return it to you. In the photo, Megan and I wore wedding clothes and stood beneath a floral arch outside the hotel. Megan held my arm. Both of us smiled until our eyes curved. I accepted the photo. My fingertips brushed the surface. 5 years had passed. The edges had yellowed slightly. I looked at Megan's smile in the photo for 3 seconds. Then I folded the photo in half. Then folded it again. And tore it into 4 pieces. Auntie. The past is over. I placed the pieces on the coffee table. I'm leaving. I turned and left. Behind me came her mother's suppressed sobbing. Like a thin thread tightening around the throat. Broken. Muffled. Heavy. I did not look back. Downstairs, I got into the car and placed the envelope on the passenger seat. I did not immediately start the engine. I leaned back and looked through the windshield at the gray sky. My phone lit up. Lawyer Chen messaged, "The divorce agreement has been sent to Megan Zhou's email. She confirmed receipt and said she will sign as soon as possible." I replied, "Understood." After sitting there a while longer, I started the car. The engine filled the small cabin with steady white noise. I shifted gears, left the compound, and merged into the main road. After 2 intersections, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. But I recognized the ending digits. Megan's old number. I had already deleted the contact name. I stared at the screen for 5 seconds. Then answered. "Hello." There was silence on the other end. Only soft, hurried breathing. "Megan. Did you receive the money my mother gave you?" "I did." Another silence. Then Megan spoke. Her voice was so hoarse I could barely recognize it. "Ethan, I know you don't want to hear me speak anymore. But I still want to say, thank you. Thank you for not reporting me to the police. Thank you for leaving me the house and the divorce agreement. Thank you for giving me the last bit of dignity." I held the steering wheel and looked at the road ahead. "You don't need to thank me. The house is what you should have. Nothing else." "I know." Megan sniffed. I wanted to tell you. I'm leaving the city tomorrow. I found a job in a county near my hometown. Cost of living is low there. I won't disturb you again. I said nothing. Ethan, her voice grew choked. I'm really, really sorry. If time could go back, would never, Megan. I interrupted her. Time cannot go back. Look forward. The other end was quiet for a long time. Then Megan softly said one word. Okay. She hung up. I lowered the phone and saw the call duration. 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I pressed the screen dark and tossed it back onto the passenger seat. It landed on top of the craft paper envelope. The car continued forward. The elevated road stretched above. The shape of the city unfolded on both sides. I turned on the car music. A random old song began playing. The guitar intro was familiar. A folk song I often listened to in college. The singer sang, I once thought the world was round, and if I kept walking, would return to where I began. I hummed one line along with it. Then I switched to the next song. When I returned home, the house was empty. 2 cushions were missing from the living room. The place on the coffee table where Megan usually left her cup was empty. The pink slippers in the shoe cabinet were gone. I changed shoes and entered the kitchen. Inside the refrigerator were only a few bottles of mineral water and an unopened bag of bread. I took out a bottle, opened it, and drank. Then I leaned against the kitchen counter. On the living room sofa, 2 shallow dents remained. One was where I usually sat. The other was where Megan used to curl up watching television. On the sofa cushion was a faint coffee stain from one time when she accidentally spilled coffee. Back then, she had said she would change the sofa cover. She had delayed it until now. I looked at the coffee stain for a while. Then looked away. I entered the study and turned on the computer. I checked the project proposal for tomorrow's investor meeting one final time. Then I opened the files old Joe had sent about Mark Ma and read them line by line. After Huaxin Real Estate acquired the West District land last year, its cash flow had remained tight. But last month, a 30 million yuan funding gap was suddenly filled. The source was an investment company called Mingyuan Capital. And in Mingyuan Capital's shareholder list, I saw a familiar name. Felix Yan's older sister. Yan Fang. I took a screenshot and sent it to old Joe. Who is Yan Fang? Old Joe replied quickly. Felix's older sister. She runs a small loan company in Shenzhen. On paper it's a legal P2P platform. In reality, loan sharking. Mark Ma's 30 million came through Mingyuan Capital as an investment channel. The annual interest is insanely high. To put it bluntly, Felix used the money he stole from Dingsheng and funneled it through his sister to lend to Mark Ma. It launders money and earns interest. Does Mark Ma know where the money came from? Most likely. He and Felix go way back. Money siphoned from Dingsheng was split and poured into Mark Ma's real estate projects. That's a money laundering chain. I stared at the screen. My fingers tapped lightly on the desk. Then I picked up the phone and called old Wang from Jianya. Brother Wang, what happened with the matter I asked you to investigate? There's something. Old Wang lowered his voice. Huaxin Real Estate has been raising money everywhere lately. They contacted several private lending channels. Monthly interest is as high as 2%. Their cash flow is tight. After acquiring that West District land, development costs went far beyond budget. They are robbing Peter to pay Paul. Did they ask the bank for loans? They did. But the bank assessed their risk as too high. Approved less than half. They are surviving on private money right now. If one link breaks, the whole plate collapses. I thought for a moment. Brother Wang, can you arrange a connection? I want to meet Mark Ma. What do you want to meet him for? To chat. I said. I want to see what he is really trying to do. Old Wang stayed silent for several seconds. Fine. I'll help you arrange it. But Ethan Lee, be careful. Mark Ma is not simple. I know. After hanging up, I closed the computer and placed the documents into the drawer. Night had deepened. Outside the window, countless lights shone like a river of stars. I stood before the window and saw a warm yellow light glowing from an apartment across the street. In the kitchen, a woman's shadow moved. In the living room, a child seemed to be crawling on the carpet. I pulled the curtains shut. Lying in bed, the ceiling glowed faintly in the dark. On the pillow was still the scent of Megan's shampoo. A faint gardenia fragrance. trapped in the fibers. I turned over and buried my face into the other side of the pillow. The smell still clung to my nose. I closed my eyes. Many images flashed through my mind. Megan smiling in her wedding dress. Her first attempt at cooking, ruining the kitchen and placing a burnt plate of tomato scrambled eggs before me, saying, "Just try it." Her sneaking out of bed at midnight on my birthday to prepare a surprise, only to hit her knee on the coffee table. And then her arm around Felix's as she entered the hotel revolving door without looking back. Those images alternated in my mind. Finally, they froze on that revolving door. Round and round it turned, grinding up all the good and bad together, swallowing them, spitting out only a blur of light and shadow. I opened my eyes and reached for my phone on the bedside table. 1:23 a.m. I scrolled through my contacts. Finally, I opened old Joe's chat and typed, "Tomorrow, keep an eye on Megan's flight or train. After she leaves, tell me." Old Joe replied with a question mark. I did not explain. I placed the phone back down and closed my eyes again. This time, I fell asleep quickly. That's all for today's story. Remember to subscribe and leave a comment.